It was a sunny Saturday morning in Maplewood Estates, the kind of morning where everything looks perfect. Pristine lawns, neatly trimmed hedges, and the soft hum of sprinklers watering the grass. I had been tending to my front yard, planting marigolds and petunias along the edges of the driveway. My kids, Max and Lily, were inside, pretending to clean up their rooms but really sneaking peeks out the window at the sunny day ahead. "Dad, come on," Max yelled, bursting out the door with a small box of Sidewalk chalk clutched in his hand. "Let's make the biggest hopscotch ever." Lily followed, holding a handful of bright, rainbow-colored chalk pieces. "And I'm going to draw animals and flowers, and maybe even a rainbow." I laughed. "All right, let's make this driveway the most colorful street in Maplewood." Within minutes, the driveway transformed into a vibrant canvas. Hopscotch grids crisscrossed the concrete. Cartoon animals danced along the edges, and Lily carefully sketched a rainbow that arched over the walkway. I leaned against the porch railing, smiling. For once, the day was perfect, calm, and simple. That's when I noticed movement across the street. Mrs. Carlson, the HOA president, was marching toward our house with a clipboard in hand. She was known in the neighborhood for her strict enforcement of every rule, from grass height to mailbox decorations. She was carrying a coffee in one hand and a pen that looked like it was ready to issue citations on the spot. Her eyes locked on our driveway, and I knew immediately that trouble had arrived. "Children are not allowed to draw on community property," she barked, pointing at Max and Lily. "Sidewalk chalk is a violation of HOA Rule 18C. You must erase it immediately." I froze. "It's just chalk. It washes away in the rain," I said, hoping a rational argument would work. "That's not the point," she shrieked, stomping her foot. "You're setting a dangerous precedent for the entire neighborhood. How can we expect homeowners to follow the rules if we allow this?" I tried reasoning further. "It's harmless, temporary, and it's on our driveway, not the sidewalk. That driveway is visible to the street. That counts as community property," she shot back. Before I could respond, she whipped out her phone. "I'm calling the authorities. This is an official complaint." I laughed nervously. "The cops. Over chalk." She gave me a glare that could have frozen water. "Yes, over chalk. This is a matter of principle and community standards." 20 minutes later, a police squad car rolled up. Max and Lily froze mid-hopscotch, chalk suspended in midair. 2 officers stepped out, looking extremely confused. Ma'am, what's going on?" Officer Daniels asked politely. "Our neighbor is defying HOA rules." Mrs. Carlson barked. "They are allowing children to vandalize community property." I swallowed hard. "It's chalk. It washes away. No property is being damaged. It's just a game." The officers exchanged glances. Officer Morales muttered under his breath, "We're really doing this." Officer Daniels cleared his throat. "Ma'am, HOA rules are civil, not criminal. We can't issue a citation for sidewalk chalk." Mrs. Carlson's face turned from red to purple. "I demand a citation. This is outrageous. We have to protect property values." Officer Daniels raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, with all due respect, your property values are safe. There's no crime here. Perhaps you should resolve this through the HOA meeting instead." Mrs. Carlson huffed like I personally insulted her. She muttered about filing a formal complaint to the board and city council and stormed off, slamming the car door as she left. Max and Lily stared at me, wide-eyed. "Dad, were we almost arrested?" Max asked. I laughed nervously. "Nope. Chalk is legal. You're safe." Feeling victorious, I kneeled down and helped Lily draw a giant rainbow across the driveway. Max added hopscotch squares stretching from one end of the street to the garage. By noon, our driveway looked like a riot of colors and shapes. Word spread quickly about the chalk incident. Within the next hour, several neighbors came out of their houses, curious about the commotion. Mr. Patel, from 2 houses down, brought his own chalk set and began sketching a mural of his dog. Mrs. Jenkins drew caricatures of HOA board members with tiny gnome hats. Before long, the entire street was buzzing with activity. The HOA president, predictably, returned. This time, she had brought along Mr. Henderson, another member of the board. They stood at the edge of our driveway, arms crossed, clearly flustered. They had expected a minor incident, a few scribbles, but what they saw was a full-scale chalk festival. Kids ran through hopscotch grids. Adults were secretly laughing as they added their own drawings. Stop this at once. Mrs. Carlson shouted. You are creating chaos. This is a violation of community rules. I smiled calmly. Everything here is temporary, legal, and harmless. The kids are just having fun. No property is being damaged. You're setting a terrible example, she yelled. At this point, Officer Daniels drove by again, slowing to take in the scene. Well, at least it's not spray paint, he muttered to Officer Morales, shaking his head. Max had drawn a little gnome holding a protest sign that read, "No HOA allowed." Lily had drawn a rainbow over a caricature of Mrs. Carlson, with the words, "Chalk Power," written above it. By mid-afternoon, more neighbors had joined in. Mr. Lopez built a tiny chalk castle. Mrs. Patel drew a hopscotch grid so big it spanned almost half the street. Laughter filled the air, and even those who had initially been skeptical found themselves secretly admiring the creativity. Mrs. Carlson and Mr. Henderson attempted to regain control. They tried measuring the size of the chalk squares, citing obscure HOA rules, and even tried counting the number of drawings. But every attempt failed spectacularly. The neighbors, emboldened by the absurdity, simply ignored them and kept adding more color. Finally, Mrs. Carlson huffed, muttered something about loss of authority, and retreated to her car. She drove off, slamming the door dramatically. The kids cheered, and I ruffled Max's hair. This is incredible, I said. We've basically turned our street into a rainbow parade. By evening, our street had become a spectacle. The driveway was a patchwork of hopscotch, rainbows, cartoon animals, and whimsical gnome art. Neighbors were taking photos, clapping, and celebrating our harmless rebellion. The next morning, I thought things would calm down. I was wrong. Mrs. Carlson returned, this time with a camera, documenting the chalk art to report it to the board. She began taking pictures of every drawing, muttering about irreversible community damage. Max and Lily, of course, were thrilled by the attention. They added more intricate designs, including a hopscotch grid that spelled out, "HOA rules suck," in giant letters. I tried to stop them, worried things might escalate further. Neighbors continued to contribute. Mr. Patel painted a full chalk mural of the neighborhood, complete with tiny gnomes resisting HOA tyranny. Mrs. Jenkins drew a caricature of Mrs. Carlson attempting to measure grass with a ruler, complete with a dramatic expression of frustration. Before long, the street was filled with onlookers. Some neighbors cheered, some filmed videos for social media, and a few older residents shook their heads in disbelief. Officer Daniels showed up again, this time parked in his squad car at the end of the street, observing quietly. I don't know what to do about this, he muttered. It's still chalk. Mrs. Carlson was in full meltdown mode. She pulled out a notebook filled with violations and tried to read aloud, citing obscure rules about driveway visibility, street aesthetics, and children's behavior. Each time she attempted to enforce a rule, a neighbor shouted back with a humorous quip or drew over her measurements. Max and Lily began directing small, chalk protests, with hopscotch squares forming barricades and rainbow paths leading to imaginary fortresses. The entire block felt like a miniature chalk rebellion. At one point, Mrs. Carlson attempted to remove a drawing herself. Max ran over and placed a tiny gnome on top of it. You can't erase this. It's legal, he said with a triumphant grin. By mid-afternoon, even Officer Daniels was chuckling. I have to say this is the weirdest HOA complaint I've ever dealt with. Finally, Mrs. Carlson retreated again, claiming she was filing official complaints and threatening legal action. Everyone knew she wasn't going to follow through. Her credibility had crumbled under the absurdity. The kids celebrated with juice boxes and high fives. Max added a final hopscotch square that read, "Victory." Lily drew a rainbow over the driveway, arching all the way to the sidewalk. By the end of the weekend, the street had been transformed. The driveway was a riot of colors, hopscotch grids, rainbow murals, and whimsical gnomes. Neighbors gathered for an impromptu celebration, taking photos, clapping, and sharing snacks. I tucked Max and Lily into bed that night. You know, I said, today we made history. The HOA tried to stop fun and failed spectacularly. Lily yawned. Can we do it again tomorrow? I smiled. Only if it rains tonight. Otherwise, Mrs. Carlson might call the police again. Over the next few weeks, the story spread throughout the neighborhood. People talked about the chalk rebellion, and our driveway became a symbol of harmless defiance and community creativity. Even those who had been skeptical initially found themselves smiling whenever they passed by our street. Mrs. Carlson eventually stopped appearing at the scene. Her attempts at enforcement had been utterly defeated by humor, community spirit, and a little rainbow-colored chalk. The incident became a legend in Maplewood Estates. It reminded everyone that sometimes the best way to fight absurd rules is not with anger or confrontation, but with creativity, patience, and a little harmless chaos. Max and Lily learned an important lesson, too. Sometimes, courage and a little imagination can turn an ordinary Saturday into a story people will tell for years. And me? I never looked at chalk the same way again.